There are lots of different types of meditation to choose from, all with different purposes and aims. So for beginners and improvers, it's best to start with something fairly basic until it eventually becomes more obvious to you just what it's really all about. The aim of this current instruction, therefore, is to introduce someone to the basic practice of meditation and the state of mind typically involved and created by it. Something that initially takes a little practice to achieve, to become used to, until it becomes a normal thing to be doing and to look forward to doing more of. At first then, and for a little while, this may thus all seem to be about bodily positions and breathing, plus that of gradually becoming used to performing the whole practice on a regular basis until it becomes a more normal thing to be doing. Something that, if practiced at least once a day, will then likely take around 2 weeks or so to establish as a working practice composed of several small elements or stages performed in a particular sequence. The first of which is the sitting position, something which should be comfortable enough without being too comfortable. For example, sitting cross-legged on the floor, but with one's back held straight so as to retain at least some small tension in the body, but without becoming overly stressed by it. Sitting thus on a small round cushion, for example, can be useful here. The slight elevation the cushion provides being just enough to take the strain off the legs, so that sitting in that position for maybe half an hour or so won't become too uncomfortable. The next thing to consider is how the hands are initially held at the beginning of the session, held differently again midway through the session, and then move to their final position as the session is brought to a close. The first position of the hands is made by holding the forefingers and thumbs together, making a circle with them in a typical meditational pose. The other 3 fingers are then held out straight, the palm kept flat, backs of the hands then being rested on one's knees. This first position of the hands is held while a series of deep, slow breaths are then performed for a few minutes. Long, slow breaths in are held for a moment and then released before returning to normal breathing again, the aim of which is to draw energy from the universe via the hands and circulate it throughout the body. The signal or cue to commence with this first hand-held position will come with the sound of a chakra bell sounded just the once. By the time the sound has faded away, you should now be in that sitting position with the hands held accordingly. After a little while of collecting energy from the universe, the bells will chime again, and this is the cue to shift the position of the hands once more, this time to their main position of the left hand held under the right with the thumbs gently touching. Both hands then held against the body at the level of the midriff or lower belly. The third and final position of the hands comes as the session ends. Again, there is a chime from the chakra bells, and this time the hands are held stretched out flat, the backs of the hands again resting on the knees, while via a series of slow breaths out, one gives back to the universe all the energy you initially collected and circulated in your body, and which then completes the session and brings it to a close. The important part of the whole thing is the middle area or time wherein the hands are held against the body at the lower midriff level. During this time, one patiently sits waiting for the universe to show us something. So all you do is sit and wait. At some point, however, you will notice that you're thinking about something, some one idea or another. It doesn't really matter what. And what you then do is to examine that thought or idea for its content. Is it, for example, an interesting idea, or just some kind of general musings of nothing really about nothing? If the idea is deemed interesting, then make a mental note of it to come back to this interesting idea later once the session is over, and then just come back to sitting and waiting. If the thought or idea is just mindless musings about nothing interesting in particular, then notice this, which will free you from it, and then again just return to sitting and waiting. And that's basically the whole practice in a nutshell. That's really all you have to learn to do. This introductory session will only be for 15 minutes. 5 minutes to collect some energy, 5 minutes to actually meditate upon one's thoughts, followed by 5 minutes of giving it all back again. After the session is over, you will probably then notice that your mood has evened out quite a lot. A feeling of peace and even mild contentment often ensues after a session like this, and one accordingly feels slightly aloof from the world for a little while afterwards. This is a perfectly normal and desirable state to attain, something that gradually deepens and widens the more you practice, preferably also gradually extending the sessions themselves for anything up to an hour in all. So okay, let's start by first getting into a comfortable enough sitting position. Close your eyes and breathe normally for a few moments, just trying to relax some and to become comfortable. When you hear the chakra bells, the session will begin and you should then shift your hands to their starting positions. When you hear the second chime, shift your hands to the second position and then very slightly open your eyes and look in the direction of an area on the floor in front of you, about 4 or 5 feet away. Don't open them enough to actually see anything, just open them enough to let in some light, and it's this light you should then gaze at. When the third bell rings, shift your hands to their final position and listen to the instructions then given, and which will also bring the whole session to a close. A couple of weeks or so of doing this will establish this routine of meditating for you, in which case you can then begin to gradually increase the length of time you spend in meditation. The more harmoniously this all progresses, the better for you in the long run it becomes. So don't be tempted to rush things. You are becoming acquainted with the universe, and it takes time to become familiar with it. So now then, and assuming you're already in a seated position, let's really begin. Close your eyes and wait until you hear the first chakra bells. Move your hands to their starting positions, forming a circle with your thumbs and forefingers. Now take a long, slow breath in. Hold it for just a moment, and then let out all the air and return to breathing normally again. Breathe in slowly again. Hold it for a moment, and then let it all go again and breathe normally. Take another slow breath in. Hold it, and then let it all go again. Continue doing this now until you hear the chakra bells again. Now move your hands to their second position, the left hand held under the right as though cradling it, and bring your thumbs together. Slightly open your eyes to look in the direction of an area in front of you about 4 or 5 feet away, keeping them only just open enough to let in some light, but not any images. And for the next 5 minutes silently observe your thoughts in the manner suggested. close your eyes and bring your hands to their third and final positions. The palms held flat, the backs of your hands resting on your knees. Now take a nice deep breath in. Hold it for a moment, and then breathe out everything you've taken and or have been given, and then breathe normally again for a few minutes. Breathe in, hold it, and breathe out all that you've received. In effect, you are giving it all back to the universe and keeping nothing for yourself. That in that sense, emptiness is a kind of fullness. Breathe in, hold it, and out again, letting it all go, giving it all back. Continue with this until you hear the bells again, and which will signal that the session is over. If that was your first ever meditation session, then well done. You've definitely broken the ice, and all that remains now is to keep doing it, gradually extending the length of your sessions. A good time to practice like this is every morning before you have something to eat, as a way of setting up your whole mood and approach to the day. Thus you will gradually build up the habit and mood of doing so until it all becomes so familiar that you have no problems performing it, plus that of rapidly entering into a meditative state of consciousness. A few weeks and months of this will likely then very positively affect your whole outlook on life in general, as you begin to see things and yourself too somewhat differently. Good luck.